Australia has always been the life of the party when it comes to multiculturalism, hasn't it? From those first Pommie settlers to the waves of newcomers from Asia, Africa, and beyond, this country of over 25 million has proved time and time again that Australians know how to throw open the doors and get the Barbie going for everyone. Of all, though, even the backyard with the most sunlight can get a few unwanted weeds. The benefits of immigration to Australia's economy and culture are obvious, like the nose on your face. But the strain immigration is taking on their resources and social cohesion has Australians scratching their heads and wondering if they bit off more than they can chew. With house costs soaring and infrastructure collapsing, is the Australian dream coming to an end? Or is there a way to soothe out the wrinkles and yet maintain the happy times? In this video, we'll be taking a closer look at the growing case of why Australia should significantly reduce its immigration intake. Before we start on the chapters of this video, what are your thoughts on this issue? Let us know with some facts. Let's briefly look at the history of immigration in Australia over time. One of the oldest continuous civilizations in the world, the Indigenous Australians, lived in the ancient territory of Australia long before European explorers arrived. In the epic tale of human migration and settlement, these early occupants, the ancestors of today's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, are thought to have arrived on the continent between 40,000 and 70,000 years ago, making them true pioneers. The European chapter of Australia's immigration saga began in the early 17th century, when daring explorers from across the oceans, including the Dutch, French, and finally British, made their first coastal landings. But the actual climax, at least from the British perspective, came in 1788, when they had the wonderful notion of establishing a prison colony in a little location named New South Wales. They looked at each other and said, let's just unceremoniously dump a load of convicts in the middle of the Aussie bush and see how that pans out. You can check out a previous video on our channel, The Dark Side of Australia, to get some more details about how it really panned out. Anyway, it was the British penal colony in New South Wales that truly marked the beginning of permanent European colonization, with January 26th henceforth remembered as Australia Day. And just when you thought things couldn't get any more exciting, gold was discovered in the 19th century in New South Wales in Bathurst, and later in the newly established colony of Victoria. As a result, thousands of immigrants, primarily from the British Isles, flocked to the continent in search of their fortunes, creating a true gold rush. 2% of the British Isles population had traveled to these far southern coastlines by the 1850s. Following World War II, Australia's immigration rules shifted dramatically. The restricted White Australia policy was finally repealed, allowing in a very new wave of migrants from Asia, Europe, and beyond. Over the following decades, over 3 million Europeans alone flocked to this sun-drenched land, permanently transforming its demographic makeup. Suddenly, the once quaint British colony had developed into a dynamic, cosmopolitan metropolis, much to the dismay of the old guard, I'm sure. But Australia welcomed the infusion of fresh blood with open arms. Today, Australia ranks as one of the most cosmopolitan civilizations on Earth, with a quarter of its inhabitants born in a foreign country, a significant larger proportion than its counterparts in the United States. Australia has seen a sharp increase in immigration in recent years. The net migration, or the difference between persons entering and leaving the country, has more than doubled, from roughly 250,000 before the outbreak to an amazing 500,000 in the fiscal year ending July 2023. This sudden surge of newcomers has put pressure on the real estate market, resulting in a serious housing crisis. To compound the problem, successive governments have failed to invest enough resources in the infrastructure and services required to accommodate such a rapid population increase. Surely, the simple principles of supply and demand would suggest as much. Despite their unending wisdom, Australian leaders have been unable to keep up with the infrastructural improvements needed to support this tremendous population expansion. Due to the inability of roads, public transportation, schools, and healthcare facilities to keep up, many Australians' quality of life has been negatively impacted by traffic, crowding, and lengthy wait times. The housing and infrastructure challenges posed by high immigration levels have fueled a growing backlash against immigration in the Australian community. According to a recent global survey, nearly half the country, that's 46% for those playing at home, now reckon we should be putting the brakes on the population influx. And get this, it's not just the grumpy old codgers or the radicals on the fringes. Oh no, this settlement cuts across the whole bloody spectrum, young and old, rich and poor. Aussies aren't a bunch of xenophobes or racists or what have you. The survey shows Australians are still pretty keen on the whole qualified professionals with a job lined up deal. 70% of Australians are positive. But when it comes to the unskilled laborers searching for work or those coming here to claim benefits, and let's be honest, those categories don't even exist in our immigration program, well, that's where the problem starts to rise. The popular Australian dream of owning a home, having a fulfilling career, and enjoying a high standard of living is gradually evaporating, and immigration is a major contributing factor to the issue. Some of the more excitable types have been quick to jump on this discontent and really stoke the fires of division. You've got your far-right politicians stoking fears about crime and gangs and the erosion of true blue Aussie values. And then you've got the likes of Peter Dutton, the immigration minister, who's been copping flack for some of his colorful comments about certain immigrant groups. Let's not forget that whole palaver with Senator Anning and his maiden speech, calling for a final solution to Muslim immigration. Other senators were seen lining up to shake his hand in apparent support. Australia's existing immigration policies are undoubtedly ineffective and need to be changed. The administration has already moved in this direction by reducing the permanent migrant cap from 190,000 to 160,000. There are concerns that the immigration wave would harm local graduates' career prospects, particularly in STEM fields. Many Australian STEM graduates are finding it difficult to get employment in their fields of choice, despite industry associations alerting them to skill shortages. This is because firms are choosing to hire experienced overseas workers rather than investing in training locals. This perverse dynamic raises questions about the effectiveness of Australia's skilled migration program and whether it's truly addressing genuine labor market needs. There's a risk that it's suppressing wages and career opportunities for young Australians, further eroding the Australian dream of upward mobility and prosperity. Maintaining Australia's fundamental ideals of justice, inclusivity, and social cohesiveness is just as important as controlling immigration numbers when it comes to setting the immigration policy correctly. Australia has benefited much from immigration. Nonetheless, the nation is currently facing a difficult decision. Should Australians get rid of immigrants? One potential solution to address community concerns and maintain Australia's reputation as a prosperous multicultural nation would be to moderate immigration levels to more sustainable numbers, while simultaneously making substantial investments in housing, infrastructure, and public services. This approach should be implemented without further stigmatizing or marginalizing immigrant communities. The discourse surrounding immigration should shift from a blame-based narrative to a more solution-focused perspective, recognizing the significant contributions that migrants make to Australian society.